My fiancé and his mom mocked my late firefighter dad and trashed his belongings, so I smiled, thanked them for revealing their true colors, and canceled the wedding in front of everyone. Yes, that's true. Not an exaggeration, not a metaphor. We were supposed to get married this spring. We lived together. We were planning everything. The dress was bought. The menu was picked. The photographer booked. Just a few weeks left. And then, nothing. I stood up at our rehearsal dinner, looked around at his entire family, our friends, and said, "There will be no wedding." His mom, Yvonne, dropped her wine glass. Alex looked at me like I was suddenly speaking another language. And in a way, I was. He never really understood a word I was saying. But for you to understand why I did what I did, I need to go back a bit. My name's Tessa. I'm 28. I work at the front desk of a pediatric clinic in Oregon. Not exactly glamorous, but I love it. I know all the regular kids by name. We have a sticker drawer and a frog-shaped thermometer that always makes them laugh. Some of them stop by just to say hi. That alone makes every traffic jam worth it. My dad was a firefighter, 22 years of service. He wasn't just a guy in a helmet. He was the kind of man who'd stop to fix a stranger's mailbox, who gave his coat to a freezing teenager at a bus stop without thinking twice. He was kind, not Instagram kind, the kind that actually makes your throat tighten. He taught me how to change a tire, brew real tea, and say no without apologizing, and he always kept his word. 3 years ago, he died in a fire. He saved a woman and her 2 kids, got them out. Hero, right? But then he heard barking from inside the house and went back in. The place collapsed. He didn't make it out. He knew he might not. But we'd just lost our family dog, Daisy, a yellow lab, 14 years with us. She died of old age just weeks before the fire. We were heartbroken. Dad was heartbroken. I remember him saying, "Every night I still look for her by the door. Every morning I reach out, hoping she's breathing. And then I see the empty bed and that damn collar, and I don't know what to do with it." So when he heard that bark in the flames, he didn't hear just any dog. He heard Daisy, and he couldn't not go back. After that, there were the usual things: funeral, medals, certificates, speeches. I kept what mattered most in a box: his badge, a letter from the guys in his station, his medal for bravery, his watch, a photo of him and Daisy, and her collar, with the tag that read, "Daisy Satterfield. Call if lost. Will come." I kept that box in our bedroom, not to sit around crying over it, but because it reminded me who I was, where I came from, a family that saved people, that loved deeply, that didn't walk away. Alex knew what that box meant to me. He said he understood, said he respected it. His mom knew too. She always smiled when I talked about Dad, but her smiles were like thin ice on a pond, pretty on top, but cold and easy to fall through. And what she did with that box was the beginning of the end. From the moment I met Yvonne, she had this air about her, like everything she said came with invisible quotation marks. She was one of those women, polished, perfectly highlighted hair, always dressed like she was going to brunch with a magazine editor. Pushing 60 but could pass for younger from 10 feet away. The kind of woman whose face says, "I'm too polite to say what I really think of you." She didn't work. Lived off the investments her husband, Alex's father, left behind. He was a surgeon. Died while Alex was still in school. Since then, Yvonne ran the family. Even though the family mostly consisted of herself and her opinion, Alex, whether he realized it or not, was her favorite project. He never said that out loud, but I could feel it in everything. Yvonne said she was involved in charity and civic life. What that really meant was holiday committee meetings, posing for photos next to donation boxes, and hanging out at her women's club gossiping about whose husband left this week and which nanny wore Crocs in public. She donated flowers to local galas and saw herself as the moral compass of the entire zip code. She never said, "You're not good enough for us." She said, "Girls like you make men softer." She didn't call my job low status. She'd just smile and ask, "Have you thought about getting certified?" You know, so you could move on to something a little more serious. She didn't mock my wardrobe. She'd say, "You have such a natural look. That's really trendy right now. Looking kind of simple, in a good way." Once, when I mentioned my mom worked as a grade school teacher, Yvonne nodded and said, "Oh, so patience runs in your family. Teachers are angels, especially considering what they earn." And during one of our earliest visits, she looked at a picture of my dad and said, "He has an honest face." Simple, meant in the best possible way. Every time we left her house, I felt like I'd spent the entire evening trying to be pleasant and still somehow failed the audition. Everything was technically polite, but afterward I'd feel this weight in my chest, like someone had subtly reminded me I didn't quite belong, just nicely enough that I couldn't call it out. Alex was usually around for all of this. Sometimes he laughed. Sometimes he went quiet. I used to think he was just staying neutral, trying not to make things worse. But then I started noticing the way he looked at her, like he was waiting for her cue, watching her face to figure out what he was supposed to think. And the closer we got, the more I realized I might have been living with Alex, but I was playing by her rules. Yvonne lived 20 minutes away in a perfectly curated house with a garden that looked like it had its own Pinterest board. She popped in often, unannounced, always with a bag of organic muffins, unsolicited decor advice, and an invisible checklist of all the ways I didn't measure up. At one point, she suggested hosting a cozy family dinner at our apartment, said it would feel more intimate. "I thought we'd invite Aunt Cindy and her husband," she said, folding napkins at our kitchen table, "and Uncle Robert and his wife." I nodded slowly and asked, "What about my mom? Is she coming?" Yvonne looked up briefly and said, "Oh, dinner's just for 7. Just family. I hope your mom won't take it personally." She smiled, that tight, too perfect smile of hers. I didn't argue. I just texted my mom. She showed up in her nicest sweater, holding a tray of homemade rolls and smiling like she meant it. She sat next to me all night, calm, warm, with that same face she used to make when I stood up for someone at school. And Yvonne? She turned the dial all the way up, speaking with fake sweetness, smiling a little too wide, and quietly needling my mom with questions like, "Have you always lived in that neighborhood?" My mom and I are close, always have been. After Dad died, she didn't shut down or give up. She kept teaching at the elementary school and called me every night to tell me what the second graders did this time, usually involving glue sticks and war crimes. She supported me with Alex, even when I started doubting things myself. I kept brushing it off, told myself Yvonne just had a strong personality, that she was just over-involved, that it wasn't personal. But there's a difference between being overbearing and stomping on someone's memories, and I was finally starting to feel the difference. A week before everything happened, I went to Seattle with my girlfriends. Mandy, my college friend, wanted a bachelorette weekend, even though she didn't have a date set for her wedding yet. She just wanted to breathe, unwind, and feel 20-something and carefree again, even for a couple days. We rented a little loft, drank rosé from plastic cups, laughed until we cried, and gave each other ridiculous temporary tattoos on our fingers. For once, I wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes. It was one of those rare weekends when life feels light, when you think, yeah, maybe everything's gonna be okay. Then I came home, and I knew instantly something was off. The whole apartment smelled like lemon cleaner. Yvonne had clearly done her version of freshening things up. Stuff had been moved around, rearranged, and the bedroom felt too empty, too neat. My shelf. The shelf. Where I kept my dad's memory box? Completely bare. Where's my box? I asked Alex. He didn't even look up from his laptop. Mom tidied up. She said it didn't belong in the bedroom, that it'd be easier for you. Easier? I repeated. She said you're stuck in the past. Maybe she has a point. Yvonne walked in like it was her cue, with a cup of herbal tea and a face that screamed peace offering, like she hadn't just rearranged someone else's grief. Tessa, don't worry, she said lightly. I didn't throw anything away. I just organized a bit organized, I repeated. Where's the box? The attic, she said, as if that were the most reasonable answer in the world. I put it away neatly. That kind of thing doesn't belong in the bedroom. You must understand. I didn't answer. Come on, Tessa. Old dusty stuff. A leash or something? It's all just emotional clutter. You're a grown woman. At some point, you have to stop living in the past. That wasn't a leash, I whispered, throat tightening. That was Daisy's collar. She shrugged. I get it. You loved her. But she was just a dog. She was family, I said through gritted teeth. Yvonne sighed as if she were the one trying to be patient. Look, you're getting married. Starting a new life. When your bedroom looks like a memorial to someone who died. And a dog. It's like you're not ready to move forward. I didn't respond, just turned and went up to the attic. The box was stuffed in the corner under an old sheet. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. The watch wasn't there. The one with the cracked glass and the half-burned leather band. The one they found in his jacket pocket that night, too late to save him. I used to hold it sometimes, just to feel close. It was gone. And then I realized the note was missing too. That little yellowed scrap he left me on the fridge when I was 9. If you're doing your homework, good job. If you're not, I still love you, but maybe finish it anyway. And if you're sad, look in the mirror. That's my favorite girl. The marker ink had faded. The handwriting was messy, but I knew every word by heart. It wasn't there. I went downstairs, checked the kitchen trash, and there it was, folded in half, stuffed between an avocado peel and a soggy tea bag. I pulled it out, quietly. Why would you throw this away? I asked, not looking at anyone. Oh, that? Yvonne said. I thought it was just an old note. Couldn't even read what it said. My dad wrote it, I said flatly. It means something to me. I started digging through the rest of the trash. Where's the watch? I asked. The broken one? With the burned strap? She replied casually. It's probably in there too. Her tone was still calm, like she honestly believed I was the irrational one. She didn't get it, and I was trying so hard not to scream. You had no right to throw anything away, I said. She gave a little shrug. Tessa, you're clinging to trash. The bedroom's turning into a shrine. I just cleared some space. Did you a favor I finally found the watch. At the very bottom, pulled it out, went back to the bedroom, opened the closet. Where are his clothes? I asked. My voice was ice. In a bag, Yvonne said. I was going to move them to the garage. Alex needs space for his suits. They're getting wrinkled. That was our closet. In our bedroom, I said. You shouldn't be touching anything. Let alone moving his things, Yvonne pursed her lips and walked out. No apology. Nothing. Sweetheart, don't be mad, Alex said. Mom was just trying to help. He reached out, tried to rub my shoulder. I pulled away. He didn't understand. And worse, he sided with her. I went to the laundry room, found the bag, his jacket, his uniform, crumpled, folded like junk, like they belonged in the trash. I pulled them out, took them back, hung them up, where they'd always been, said nothing. But inside, I was on fire. When Yvonne finally left, the silence in the apartment was so loud it made my ears ring. I started clearing the dishes. Alex tried to help. I waved him off. I needed space. I needed to think. This couldn't go on. Not like this. I turned the kitchen faucet on full blast. Loud. Rushing. Just enough to drown out the boiling mix of anger and disappointment inside me. A couple minutes later, Alex finally walked in. "Tess, come on," he started. But I didn't let him finish. "You knew," I said. "You knew how much that box meant to me." He looked down. His shoulders dropped a little. I didn't know she was going to touch it." "That's not good enough," I said, trying to stay calm. "We've been living together for over a year. We're building a life. That box wasn't just some junk in a hallway. It's been in our bedroom since day one. And you let your mother walk in, rearrange our closet, and throw out things that meant the world to me. She didn't even apologize." He rubbed his face with both hands. "She just wanted to help." She was trying to tidy up. I didn't notice what she was doing. "You would have noticed if you'd cared." I turned away, started loading dishes into the washer. He stood behind me, not close enough to comfort, not far enough to leave me alone. "I'll talk to her," he said eventually. "Tomorrow. I promise. She'll apologize." I turned back to him. "Alex, this isn't just about the box." He froze. I saw it in his eyes. Confusion. Maybe guilt. Or maybe just that stubborn refusal to go deeper. "It's not just about my dad," I said. "It's about me. About your mother thinking she has a right to control everything. Even our space, our stuff, my life. And you let her—" "I didn't let her," he said, but his voice was weak. "You've seen how she treats me. You've heard what she says, and you just stay quiet. Because you're used to it, aren't you? Used to her always being right?" He looked at me, and for the first time all night, he said something honest. "Yeah," he said. "I guess I am." We stood there in silence. I almost walked away, but then he asked, "Do you think we won't make it?" I turned back around. I wanted to say I don't know, but instead I said, "If you want to be with me, you're going to have to be separate from her." "Not physically. Emotionally?" He nodded. Too quickly. And I knew. He'd heard the words, but he hadn't understood them. The next few days felt like I was on autopilot. Final fittings, seating charts, menu revisions. The dress was ready. Invitations sent. My phone was buzzing with reminders. Everything was moving forward. But inside me, everything was falling apart. Of course my mom noticed. I hadn't told her anything, but she asked anyway. "What happened?" We were sitting in her kitchen. Her house always smelled like coffee and cinnamon. Everything warm and solid and safe. I told her, not everything, but enough. About the box. About how Yvonne said it was just old stuff. About Alex's response. She listened without interrupting, then took my hand. "I try not to interfere," she said. "But listen to yourself, Tess. To your gut. If you feel like he doesn't see you, if his family doesn't feel like home, it's not too late to walk away." I nodded, because she was saying something I'd felt before, more than once. But I wasn't ready to burn it all down. Not yet. Part of me still hoped that after the wedding, once things settled, once his mom backed off, maybe we'd be okay. The night of the rehearsal dinner came before I could really brace for it. Yvonne hosted it, at a restaurant she made sure to note had opened just for us, off hours. Everything looked perfect. White linens, candles, soft music. It was the kind of setting you'd see in a bridal magazine. The only problem was, I couldn't make myself smile. The night before, I'd asked Yvonne if it was okay to mention my dad in my vows. Just a few words, not a whole speech. He was a part of me. If I was building a new life, I wanted him to be present in some way. She skimmed through her clipboard and smiled like I'd asked to host a funeral instead of a wedding. I just think that might be a little heavy for the guests, you know? No need to turn the evening into a memorial, right? Then, with a smirk barely tucked in, you weren't planning to bring a framed photo or anything, were you? There were over 40 guests, most of them from Alex's side. His family was loud and proud. Uncle Gary, who owned a car wash chain and acted like the mayor wherever he went. His wife, Patricia, used to be a lawyer, now calls herself a social advocate. Then there was cousin Nicole, a certified therapist with a YouTube channel called Domestic Psychoaesthetics. She gives advice like, maintain boundaries, but make it cute. She was filming stories in the restaurant bathroom and spoke like she was giving expert testimony in court. They brought a few family friends and some of Gary's business partners. On my side, just my mom, a few relatives, and 3 girlfriends. That was it. At first, everything seemed okay. People showed up on time. Alex stayed close. I kept my head down, smiled where I needed to, and just tried to get through it. Then Uncle Gary stood up, scooted his chair back, raised a glass, and boomed, "We're just so happy Alex found a woman like this." Simple, but strong. Lucky guy. Not every day someone from humble roots joins a family like ours. I clenched my fork. Alex didn't say a word. He smiled. A while later, Nicole leaned toward me, almost whispering, "You've never had stuff like this before, right, Tessa?" I blinked. Like what? Oh, you know, foie gras, oysters. Just figured it might be unfamiliar. I mean, just in case you have an allergy or something. She giggled like it was genuine concern. It wasn't. I said nothing, but I caught the flicker of a smirk on Alex's face. Then Yvonne stood up. "I'm just so happy to see everyone here. This is a big day, and I want to say a few words about our Tessa." My back stiffened. Alex squeezed my hand under the table. "Tessa has a strong personality. She knows what she wants. Sometimes a little too much pause. Alex has always been calm, steady. I think they'll balance each other out. She'll bring him out of his shell, and he'll teach her how to slow down a bit." Polite laughter. Not real. I really do believe in them. Of course, the road to happiness isn't always a straight one, especially when people come from different backgrounds. Pause again. But isn't that the beauty of love? We all grow. I'm learning, for example, that memory boxes can sit in a bedroom, that the past doesn't always leave with the person. What matters is patience, respect, and a sense of humor. She raised her glass and looked straight at me. Alex smiled again. I forced a smile back and held my wine glass so tight I thought it might shatter. Later, in the restroom, I overheard 2 of his relatives whispering near the sinks. Well, at least she's pretty. That's something, especially coming from that kind of family. Bet she doesn't even know how to fold a napkin. Her dad was a hero, sure, the other said. But honestly, he should have been thinking about his daughter, not someone else's dog. Died over a dog. That's just stupid laughter. 2 dry, sharp laughs to the chest. I stepped out of the stall. Didn't say a word. They froze. I walked past them in silence. Alex. He knew who his family was. He'd heard them talk like this before, and he didn't defend me then. He wasn't defending me now. At the bar, I saw Uncle Robert, tipsy and chatty, talking to Alex. I walked over, not on purpose, just wanted a glass of water. But I got there just in time to hear, "Just don't let her try to change you." Yvonne said she's got a real temper, snappy, impulsive. "Don't give in. Be a man." He laughed. Hope she's not the kind to make you run into burning buildings after dogs. And Alex? He laughed too. Oh, no way! What do I look like? Crazy? That laugh, his laugh, hit harder than anything else that night. I turned and walked back to the table on shaky legs. They were all laughing at me, at my family, at the sacrifice my dad made, and Alex wasn't just quietly going along with it. He was in on it. He laughed. I barely remember the rest. People made toasts, said things about love, the future, memories. I sat there like I was under glass, watching but distant, hearing muffled echoes, nothing landing. My hands were shaking. I hid them under the table. Alex, sweet, helpful, attentive, poured me water, leaned in to whisper something. I nodded, pretending I was still there with him. But in my head, everything was spinning. Their words, their smiles, his laugh. Oh, no way! What do I look like? Crazy? I closed my eyes, and I saw my dad's hand on my shoulder, solid, warm. His voice, the way he used to say, "Don't let them define you. You're my daughter. That's already enough to be strong." A hand brushed my arm. You okay? It was my mom, quiet, just for me. I nodded, then shook my head slightly. Can we step out for a minute? We walked outside. The air was cold, but I barely noticed. She didn't say anything, just stood there next to me, like she always did when I needed her most. I can't do this, I said, my voice low but steady. I can't marry him. You heard what they said, right? She nodded slowly. I heard. And I agree. You shouldn't have to tolerate that. I was just waiting for you to say it. I kept thinking, maybe if I just try harder, be softer, quieter, easier to like, they'd accept me. But they don't want me. They want me to be grateful they let me in. They want me to forget where I come from. Mom looked at me for a long moment, then pulled me into a hug. You don't owe them anything. Not gratitude, not silence. Be yourself. I swallowed hard. I thought Alex was different, I whispered. I thought he got it. That he got me. That he loved me. Another pause. But he's just like the rest of them. He agrees with them. We stood like that for another minute. Then I took a deep breath and said, I need to say it. Out loud. In front of everyone. So it doesn't become Tessa lost it or Tessa snapped. I want them to know why. She nodded again. I'll be right there. We walked back inside. The dinner was winding down. People were chatting, grabbing dessert, clinking glasses. I walked over to my girlfriends. Leaning in, I said quietly, There's not going to be a wedding. I'm going to tell them now. We'll talk later, okay? They froze for a second, but only a second. Melanie grabbed my hand and squeezed it tight. We've got you, Tess. Always, I gave my friends a shaky smile and nodded, then stepped aside for a moment, just to breathe, to gather the last bit of strength I had left. And that's when I heard Yvonne's voice. She was behind one of the velvet curtains, thinking no one could hear, talking on the phone in her usual, hushed but pointed tone. Well, of course she's hot-tempered, runs in the family. Her dad was the same, always charging into things he shouldn't. But yes, it all went well. She quieted down. Looks like she's finally starting to get it. Trauma? Please. It's just family drama dressed up as heroism. I froze. That was it. Everything inside me suddenly snapped into focus. My chest was still tight, but the fear? Gone. I wasn't shaky anymore. I was steady. I walked back to the table, picked up a fork and tapped my glass. Clear, crisp sound. Everyone turned, even the ones still fussing over dessert. Excuse me, I said, Could I have a moment? Alex turned to me, smiling. I think he thought I was going to say something sweet, something sentimental. I wasn't. I just wanted to say a few words. It won't take long. I paused, took a breath. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. And especially, thank you for your honesty. Because tonight, I heard everything I needed to hear to know. This wedding isn't happening. The silence was immediate. You could feel the confusion ripple through the room. It's not because I'm angry. And it's not because I'm afraid of hard things. It's because I will not marry a man who smiles while his family laughs at me, at my mother, at my father, who died saving someone's life, who was the kind of man most people only pretend to be. My fingers were trembling, but I didn't stop. I won't marry a man who thinks it's okay for me to hide the things I love. To be smaller, quieter, easier, just to fit into someone else's world. Dead silence. Even the background music faded into nothing. You wanted me to shrink, to be grateful, to be quiet. But I remembered who I am. I remembered whose daughter I am, and I don't owe anyone an apology for that. I turned to Alex. I loved you. I did, but if you can't stand beside me when it matters, then you're not ready to be a husband. That was it. I set the glass down and walked to the door. My mom was already standing, grabbing her purse. We left together. No one followed. And honestly, that was the best part. Outside, I took a breath so deep it felt like the first real one in months. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't cold. Yes, it would hurt. Yes, there would be questions. But I knew who I was. I was my father's daughter, and I had stood up. I was packing, tossing clothes into a suitcase like the walls of the apartment were closing in. I couldn't stay here anymore. I just couldn't. I hadn't made it out the door yet when Alex walked in. He stopped in the doorway like he hadn't expected to see me. Or maybe he hoped everything would still be fine. It wasn't. He closed the door behind him, walked in slowly, his eyes on the suitcase. You're leaving? I didn't answer, just zipped the case and kept moving. Tess, wait. We need to talk. Do we? I asked without looking at him. After everything that happened, you think there's still something to talk about? Come on, he said, stepping closer. You overreacted. It was just dinner. Just words. People had a few drinks. I looked up at him. Drinks? Alex, they laughed at my father. At his death. At me. And you sat there and laughed with them. You didn't even try to stop it. He sighed, rubbed his face, took a step back. No one laughed at you. Or your dad. You're blowing it out of proportion. They were just stupid jokes. I didn't want to make a scene. Oh, so that's your solution? Say nothing when your fiancé is being humiliated, and then maybe, later, we'll talk it out over tea? He looked confused, a little lost, then looked away. Okay, maybe Mom said some things. But you know how she is. Tess, she's just like that. But she's not a bad person. I kept moving, grabbing things, folding fast, trying not to shake. No, she is a bad person. And you know it. You just didn't want to admit it. I thought maybe you were scared to stand up to her. But now I see. You actually agree with her. That's not true, he snapped. Tess, I love you. I turned and looked at him, quiet but firm. Too late. I don't believe you anymore. He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. So that's it? You're just walking away? Throwing everything away? Our wedding? Our life? No, I said. I'm walking away from a place where I'm not respected. Where my dad isn't respected. Where memories are treated like trash you can just toss out. He opened his mouth to say something else, but I raised my hand. Don't! It's too late. I grabbed my suitcase, my dad's things, the box, and left. I went to my mom's. She didn't ask questions, just hugged me and said, "You're strong." And you did the right thing. The next morning, Alex showed up, with flowers. Of course. He stood at the door with that guilty smile, like a bouquet of lilies could patch up what happened. "Tess, can we talk? Please?" I stepped aside. Silently. Mom was in the kitchen. She heard his voice and came out, gave him a dry hello, and went right back in, leaving us alone in the living room. "I miss you," he said quickly. "I didn't sleep all night." "I've been thinking about everything." He talked fast, like he knew I was about to throw him out, which, fair enough, I was. Maybe we both overreacted. You were emotional. I messed up, but it was just a misunderstanding. You know how my mom jokes. No one meant to hurt you. You just took it the wrong way. She was stressed. We all were. I looked at him, and for the first time I wasn't angry, just tired. "Alex, you still don't get it. This isn't about stress. You sat at that table, heard people mock me and my father, and you said nothing." He looked down, and then said, "If you could just admit you were a little emotional, I think that would smooth things over. Mom would forgive. We'd move on. We could still get married, like we planned." I closed my eyes for a second. He really didn't understand. To him, this was a mess that could be cleaned up, like we picked the wrong caterer or something. "You want me to apologize?" For standing up and saying it's not okay to laugh about my dead father? He didn't answer. "I just want things to go back to the way they were," he mumbled. "It's not me who lost it, Alex. You crossed the line. You all did." Repeatedly. He opened his mouth again, but his phone rang. Yvonne. He answered, and stood so close I could hear every word. "Are you with her?" Yvonne's voice was sharp, cold. "Yeah." "Well, I hope you're not about to apologize." "She needs to understand. You don't get treated like that." She embarrassed herself. Embarrassed us. If she doesn't come to her senses, let her go. You're not her puppet. You're a man. If she can't see that, well, let her crawl back to her little memory box and her dog hair. We don't need a bride like that. You'll find someone better, someone normal, someone who doesn't throw tantrums over nothing. Silence. I could hear Alex breathing. He realized I was still standing there, that I'd heard everything. And still, he didn't hang up, didn't defend me, didn't say, "Enough." Finally, in the smallest voice he muttered, "Mom, that's not fair." That was all. I turned toward the door. "Leave, Alex." "Tess, wait. Leave." I'm done explaining to someone who needs to be told why you don't stay silent when the person you love is being humiliated. 2 weeks went by. At first, I felt relief. Then, silence. And doubt. I'd lie on my mom's couch, staring at the ceiling, thinking, what if I overreacted? What if I could have explained it better? Softer? He didn't yell. He didn't cheat. He just stayed quiet, like everyone else who watches someone get hurt and does nothing. But he loved me, right? And I loved him. Still, no matter how I twisted it around in my head, it always landed in the same place. Love isn't silence when it's time to speak. It's not laughing along when someone you love is being humiliated. It's not she's just stressed every time someone does something cruel. I tried to shake it off, tried to move forward. Then, one morning, a friend sent me a screenshot and a link. Facebook, Yvonne's profile, a new post. And suddenly, everything became very, very clear. There were 3 photos from my family album. The first, me, maybe 10, sitting on my dad's shoulders. We're both smiling. Daisy is at our feet in a knitted hat with ears. There's a Christmas tree behind us, and the same tacky old garland we put up every year. The second, a crumpled watercolor I made in 1st grade. Me and Dad putting out a fire. I remember taking hours to finish it because my teacher said to use real effort. Dad framed it and hung it in the garage. He was proud of it. The third, a blurry Polaroid. Us at the lake. Dad grilling hot dogs, Mom laughing. I'm in a shirt that says Daddy's my hero, proudly holding up my first fish. On the back, Dad had written, Tessa's Catch, 2003. And below those, a photo of his fire gear. His coat, helmet, badge, and medal laid out neatly on my bed. I took that picture after I brought them home from the station. I showed it only to Alex, through tears, told him how much it meant. He said he understood. And now, there it was, online, posted by a woman who had no right to even see it, let alone share it. The caption? Sometimes the people we let into our lives turn out to be overly sentimental. We really tried to understand. We did. But when your son's fiancée turns the bedroom into a shrine for her dead father, it becomes clear this isn't about love. This is about trauma. Some people simply can't move on. It's worrying. For her mental health. And for my son. Alex deserves better. A grown woman, not a girl stuck in the past. The comments? He was supposed to live in a museum or what? Poor guy. This is why you discuss these things before the wedding. Sounds like she needs a therapist, not a husband. Even her face. Like she's somewhere else. Yikes. I sat there, staring at the screen. My hands were cold. And my gut? Burning. Only one person could have given her those photos. Only Alex. He gave her my grief, my memories, so she could use them like this. 5 minutes later, I was calling him. Why did you give her those pictures? He hesitated. I just wanted her to understand. To feel what it meant to you. I thought maybe you thought she wouldn't weaponize it. Wouldn't post it for everyone to see? I could barely keep my voice steady. Those weren't just photos, Alex. They were my heart. You handed her my grief, and she turned it into content. I'll talk to her, he said. She'll take it down. You liked the post, Alex. Save it. I'll handle it myself. You can go ahead and like the comments too if you want. Just know the whole mess is coming down. Without your help. He didn't say anything, and for the first time, that silence felt honest. I blocked his number, deleted his contact, packed up every trace of him. The post disappeared the next day. I reported it. No emotion, no explanation. Just privacy violation. Attached the screenshots. Facebook took it down within 24 hours. It's been 3 months. I moved out. Got a bright little 2-bedroom near work. It smells like coffee and clean laundry. My dad's memory box sits on the shelf. My shelf. His jacket hangs nearby behind glass. A reminder. A shield. Mom comes over on weekends. We bake pies. Watch old movies. Sometimes we laugh so hard the neighbors probably think we're throwing a party. And honestly, we are. I got offered a new position at work. Front desk coordinator at the children's clinic. I manage schedules, train new hires, and know every kid by name who shows up more than once. They trust me, and I'm doing just fine. I started jogging again, adopted a puppy, he's a lab, named him Spark. Dad would have approved. I don't think about Alex. Much. Sometimes when I pass that old cafe, I remember how he always ordered the exact same thing. How he never understood why someone would actually love dogs. He doesn't message me anymore. Good. Let him explain to his relatives why there's no wedding, no apartment, no girl who was worth growing up for. I never wanted revenge. I wanted respect. For myself. For my family. For the past that made me who I am. Now I have that. And no one, no Yvonne, no Alex, gets to take it from me ever again. So, what do you think? Did I do the right thing walking away? Or do you think I overreacted? Was there a better way to handle it? I'd really love to know, especially from people who've been through something similar. Let's talk in the comments. And if this story made you feel something, if it made you think, hit that subscribe button. There are more stories coming. Stories that stay with you. Thanks for listening.